My parents told me, "Your sister will always be our priority." At my own birthday dinner, when I asked why they were leaving early to help her move apartments for the 4th time that year, I simply replied, "Message received." The words hung in the air of the upscale Italian restaurant where I'd made reservations 3 weeks in advance. Around us, other families laughed over tiramisu and birthday candles. My untouched cake sat between empty chairs, the happy 30th birthday Marin, written in chocolate already starting to melt under the dim lighting. Mom was already gathering her purse, Dad signaling for the check he'd insisted on splitting with me, despite it being my birthday dinner. Sienna's latest crisis. A broken lease apparently required immediate parental intervention, even though she was 27 and this was her 4th move in 12 months. "We'll make it up to you," Mom said, not meeting my eyes as she stood. The same promise she'd made at my college graduation when they left early to help Sienna deal with a breakup. The same words from my engagement party when they disappeared to co-sign Sienna's car loan. I watched them walk out, Dad's hand on Mom's back in that protective way he'd never quite managed with me. Through the window, I could see them practically jogging to their car, energized by the prospect of rescuing their golden child from another self-created disaster. I'm Marin, 30 years old, as of that disaster of a birthday dinner, and I work as a senior financial analyst at an investment firm in Denver. I'd built my career through night classes and strategic job moves while living in the same modest apartment for 6 years, saving aggressively. My parents had attended exactly 2 of my work events in a decade, both times leaving early for Sienna emergencies. What they didn't know as they rushed out of that restaurant was that I'd been planning something for months, something that would finally teach them the cost of their choices. The leather folder in my bag contained documents that would change everything, but I wasn't ready to use them yet. First, I needed to let them make their choice crystal clear, over and over again, until there could be no question about what came next. I paid the full bill with my own credit card, boxed up the untouched birthday cake, and drove home in silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom around midnight. "Sienna's all settled. So glad we could help her. Love you." No mention of my birthday. No apology for abandoning me. Just cheerful relief that their favorite daughter was okay. I saved the text, adding it to a folder on my phone labeled simply Evidence. It joined dozens of others, screenshots and messages documenting years of this pattern. My apartment was dark when I arrived, but I didn't turn on the lights immediately. Instead, I sat in my car in the parking garage and opened my laptop, reviewing the spreadsheet I'd been building for 8 months. Every instance of parental favoritism, documented with dates, financial impacts, and witnesses. Every promise broken, every milestone missed, every time Sienna's manufactured drama had taken priority over my actual achievements. The numbers were staggering. My parents had given Sienna over $80,000 in the past 5 years alone, money they claimed not to have when I'd asked for help with a down payment on a house. They'd co-signed 3 leases for her, 2 car loans, and even a personal loan she'd defaulted on, damaging their credit. Meanwhile, I'd paid for my own education, my own car, my own everything, while being told I was more capable and didn't need help like Sienna did. The resentment I'd been tamping down for years crystallized into something harder, colder, more purposeful. My phone rang. Sienna's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Marin! Oh my God, you won't believe what happened." Her voice was bright, oblivious. "The landlord at my new place is so much better. Mom and Dad helped me negotiate the lease. They're literal angels. Did you have a good birthday? Sorry I couldn't make it. You know how moving is." She couldn't make it because she'd never planned to come. She'd texted that morning saying she was too stressed about her move. Our parents had still chosen to leave my dinner to help her, even knowing she'd deliberately skipped my celebration. "Yeah, it was fine," I said, my voice flat. "Glad your move went well." "You sound weird. Are you mad about something?" Sienna asked, that practiced innocence in her tone. She knew exactly what she'd done. She always knew. "Not at all," I lied smoothly. "Just tired. Long day at work." We talked for 3 more minutes, her chattering about her new apartment's hardwood floors and updated appliances, me making appropriate noises while mentally adding this call to my evidence file. When we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my car and smiled. The plan I'd been formulating was becoming clearer. I'd spent my whole life being the responsible one, the one who didn't need anything, the one who could be safely ignored because I'd figure it out myself. It was time to show them exactly what that independence had built and what it could take away. The next morning, I went to work as usual, but during my lunch break, I made a call to my parents' financial advisor, someone I'd strategically befriended at a charity event 6 months earlier. "Richard, it's Marin. I wanted to follow up on that conversation we had about estate planning. The conversation that had revealed, after carefully casual questions and a few glasses of wine, that my parents had recently updated their will to leave 70% of their estate to Sienna, 30% to me, citing her greater need. Richard didn't know he'd told me this, the wine and my sympathetic listening having loosened his usually professional discretion. My second call was to my Uncle James, my father's brother, who'd stopped speaking to my parents 3 years ago after they'd borrowed $15,000 from him to cover one of Sienna's emergencies and never paid it back. James, it's Marin. I think it's time we talked about the family situation. His pause told me he'd been waiting for this call. That evening, I received a group text in the family chat. Mom had sent photos of Sienna's new apartment, gushing about how proud she was that Sienna was finally getting settled. I noticed she'd tagged the message with family update, despite it being exclusively about one family member. I responded with a simple thumbs up emoji. No congratulations, no enthusiasm, just acknowledgement that I'd seen it. Mom immediately called. "You don't seem very excited for your sister," she said, that familiar disappointed tone in her voice. "She's really trying to turn things around." Sienna had been turning things around for 10 years. The narrative never changed. "I'm happy for her," I said neutrally, standing in my kitchen and looking at the vision board I'd created on my refrigerator. Photos of my achievements, none of which my parents had been present for. My promotion last year, celebrated alone. The charity 10K I'd run, no family in the crowd. My published article in a financial journal, unmentioned in family conversations. "You just seem distant lately," Mom continued. "Is everything okay? You're not upset about us leaving your dinner early, are you?" It was an emergency. An emergency. Sienna's 4th move in a year, entirely voluntary, completely avoidable with basic planning and financial stability, had been labeled an emergency worthy of abandoning their other daughter's 30th birthday. "Everything's fine, Mom. I understand. Sienna needed you more. See, I knew you'd understand." Relief flooded her voice. "You've always been so mature about things. Sienna's just more sensitive, you know. She needs more support." I ended the call shortly after, adding notes to my growing documentation. The words "more sensitive" and "needs more support" had been the justification for 3 decades of unequal treatment. I was the strong one who didn't need coddling. Sienna was delicate, requiring constant intervention and resources. The narrative had calcified into family lore, unquestioned and perpetual. 2 weeks after my birthday disaster, Sienna called in tears. She'd been fired from her job at the marketing agency, her 3rd job loss in 2 years. "I don't know what happened," she sobbed. "My boss just didn't like me. It wasn't my fault at all. It was never her fault." The pattern was exhaustingly predictable. Within an hour, my parents had called a family meeting at their house to discuss how we can help Sienna through this difficult time. I showed up with a box of donuts and a calm demeanor, sitting in the living room where we'd had 1,000 conversations exactly like this one. Dad paced anxiously. Mom held Sienna's hand while my sister dabbed at her eyes with tissues. "We were thinking," Dad began, "that Sienna should move back in with us for a while, just until she gets back on her feet financially." "That makes sense," I said agreeably, biting into a donut. "How long are you thinking? A month? 2? They exchanged glances. "We were thinking 6 months to a year," Mom said carefully, "just to really give her time to find the right opportunity and save up some money." Sienna had lived with them for 18 months after college, rent-free, during which time she'd saved nothing and contributed nothing to household expenses. She'd moved out only when they'd finally, gently suggested she might want to try independence. Her 4 apartments in the year since had all been increasingly expensive, each time requiring parental financial intervention when rent came due. "And her lease at the new apartment?" I asked, knowing the answer. "We'll help her break it," Dad said. "It'll cost a few $1,000s in penalties, but we can manage it." A few $1,000s they didn't have when I'd needed help with a root canal last year. "Sounds like you have it all figured out," I said, standing to leave. "Wait," Mom said, her voice taking on that familiar wheedling tone. "We were hoping, since Sienna will be saving money by living with us, that maybe you could help her with her car payment for a few months, just until she finds new employment. You're doing so well financially, and she's really struggling." The audacity took my breath away. They wanted me to subsidize my adult sister's car payment while she lived rent-free in their house, after they'd abandoned my birthday dinner to help her move into an apartment she'd now be abandoning. "How much is her car payment?" I asked calmly. $450 a month, Sienna said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "But I'd totally pay you back once I'm working again." She'd said those exact words when she'd borrowed $2,000 from me 4 years ago for emergency dental work that turned out to be cosmetic veneers. I'd never seen a penny of repayment. "I'll think about it," I said, gathering my things. "Let me check my budget and get back to you." As I drove home, my phone exploded with texts. First from Mom, "Please consider helping your sister. Family helps family." Then from Dad, "We know you're financially stable. This would mean so much to Sienna." Finally, from Sienna herself, "I know I haven't always been the best sister, but I really need you right now. Please, I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I stopped at my bank and met with my financial advisor, a woman named Patricia, who'd been helping me build wealth for 5 years. Patricia, I need to make some changes to my accounts. I want to make absolutely certain that no one can access my finances except me. No co-signers, no authorized users, nothing. She studied me carefully. Family trouble? You could say that. I spent an hour reinforcing every financial boundary I had, ensuring that no emergency, no crisis, no manufactured drama could touch my carefully built security. When I was done, my money was completely, irrevocably mine. No one could guilt me into access. No one could manipulate their way into my accounts. The fortress was complete. That night, I opened my laptop and began drafting a document. Not the one I'd use later, but a preliminary version. A list of every single instance of favoritism. Every dollar spent on Sienna that had been unavailable for me. Every milestone missed, every promise broken. The document grew to 23 pages. 23 pages of documented neglect and preferential treatment, supported by bank statements, text messages, photos, and witness testimony from extended family who'd watched the dynamic for decades. The following morning, I responded to the family texts with clinical precision. I've reviewed my budget. I cannot take on Sienna's car payment at this time. I didn't elaborate, didn't explain, didn't justify. The message was read immediately by all 3 of them, but only Mom responded, can't or won't. I left her on read. Within 2 hours, my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail again. On the 3rd attempt, I answered. Marin, we need to talk about your decision. His voice carried that edge of disappointment I'd heard my entire life whenever I failed to accommodate Sienna's needs. There's nothing to talk about. I looked at my finances and I can't commit to a recurring expense right now. You just got promoted. We know you can afford it. The presumption in his voice, the entitlement to know my financial situation and dictate how I should spend my money, crystallized my resolve. My promotion and my finances are my business, Dad. I'm sorry Sienna's struggling, but I can't help her right now. Can't or won't? He repeated Mom's question. Does the distinction matter? I asked calmly, staring out my office window at the Denver skyline. The silence that followed was loaded with years of unspoken dynamics. Finally, we're disappointed in you, Marin. We raised you better than this. Family helps family. You're right, I said, my voice soft but steady. Family should help family, equally, consistently, without favoritism. I hung up before he could respond. The group chat exploded. Mom sent a long paragraph about how worried they were about Sienna, how she was going through a really dark time, how family was supposed to support each other in difficult moments. I watched the message come through, noted the time and date, and saved it to my evidence folder without responding. Sienna added her own message. I guess I know where I stand with you now. I turned off my phone and went to lunch with my colleague Devin, who'd become a good friend over the past 2 years, over sushi. I told him about the birthday dinner abandonment and the latest car payment request. He listened, his expression darkening. Marin, that's not normal family dynamics. That's parentification and scapegoating. Scapegoating? You're the successful one, so they assume you're fine and don't need anything. Your sister is the identified patient who gets all the resources and attention. It's a really common dysfunctional pattern. He paused. What are you going to do about it? I smiled. I'm going to let them keep making choices, and then I'm going to let them live with the consequences. That weekend, Sienna moved back in with our parents. They threw a welcome home family dinner that I was invited to via group text with less than 4 hours' notice. I responded that I had plans. I didn't. I spent the evening reorganizing my apartment and updating my evidence documentation. Around 9 p.m., Uncle James called. I hear you're not playing along with the Sienna rescue operation, he said without preamble. News travels fast. Your mother called me asking if I could talk some sense into you. I told her I was the wrong person to ask, given that I'm still waiting for the 15 grand they borrowed to cover Sienna's last crisis. He paused. Listen, I don't know what you're planning, but I want you to know I see what's been happening. It's not fair. It's not right. And you don't owe them unlimited financial support just because you made better choices than your sister. We talked for an hour. James had his own stories of watching my parents' favoritism over the years, of trying to intervene and being shut out for suggesting they were enabling Sienna. He'd given up trying to maintain a relationship with them after the loan incident, but he'd stayed in touch with me independently. Whatever you decide to do, I've got your back. And I've got documentation too, if you need it. The next week brought a cascade of small crises. Sienna's car broke down, requiring $1,200 in repairs that my parents paid for. She needed interview clothes, another $300. Her phone was shutting off because she hadn't paid the bill, $200 more. Each expense was announced in the family group chat with increasing desperation. Each one met with parental accommodation and pointed silence from me. Then came the Saturday afternoon call from Mom. Maren, we need to talk. In person. Can you come over for dinner tonight? I knew what was coming. The intervention, the emotional manipulation, the guilt trip about my selfishness and Sienna's suffering. I can be there at 6. I said. I arrived with a bottle of expensive wine and my phone recording in my pocket, legal in Colorado and necessary for documentation. Sienna's car was in the driveway, the same car they'd helped her repair. Inside, the smell of Mom's pot roast filled the house, the same meal she'd made for every important family conversation. We sat down to eat, the tension palpable. Dad cleared his throat. Maren, we asked you here because we're concerned about your relationship with your sister, about your willingness to support this family. I support this family in many ways, I said calmly, cutting my pot roast. I'm financially independent. I don't create emergencies that require parental intervention. I maintain steady employment and stable housing. That's not what we mean, Mom interjected. Sienna's going through a difficult transition. We're all making sacrifices to help her. Your father and I are paying for her car repairs and insurance. We're providing free housing. The least you could do is help with her car payment. Why is it the least I could do? I asked, setting down my fork. What have you sacrificed for me lately? What emergencies of mine have you rushed to solve? The silence was deafening. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. I knew you resented me, she whispered. I knew you thought you were better than me. This isn't about being better. It's about noticing patterns. I pulled out my phone, opening a document. Would you like me to read you these patterns? I have them documented, every instance over the past decade. Dad's face reddened. We're not going to sit here and be attacked at our own dinner table. Then I'll leave. I stood, leaving the untouched wine. But before I go, I want to make something clear. I will not be funding Sienna's lifestyle. I will not be paying her car payment, her rent, her phone bill, or any other expense she incurs, not because I can't afford it, but because enabling her hasn't helped her in 30 years, and it won't start now. You're being cruel, Mom said, tears streaming. She's your sister. And you're my parents, I replied. But that didn't stop you from leaving my birthday dinner to help her move apartments for the 4th time this year. Actions have consequences. You chose Sienna, consistently, explicitly. You told me she would always be your priority. Message received. I walked out, got in my car, and drove home in silence. My phone immediately exploded with texts, accusations of selfishness, cruelty, being a bad sister and daughter. I read each one, saved it, and didn't respond. The recording from dinner was safely backed up to 3 different cloud services. Monday morning brought an unexpected visitor to my office. Sienna, somehow having found out where I worked, despite me never telling my family the specific company name. She appeared at reception asking for me, causing a scene when security questioned her. I came down to the lobby to find her crying in the chair, mascara running. Maren, please, can we just talk? She looked genuinely desperate, her usual polish cracked. I led her to a nearby coffee shop. You have 10 minutes. I know I've made mistakes, she began, stirring a latte she'd ordered on my credit card without asking. I know I've relied on Mom and Dad too much, but I'm trying to change. I really am. This job loss, it wasn't my fault. My boss had it out for me from day one. I'd heard this story before. Different job. Same excuse. Sienna, what do you want from me? I want you to give me a chance. Maybe you can't help with the car payment, but could you at least try to understand what I'm going through? Could you maybe talk to some people at your company about job openings? I know you have connections. There it was. Not an apology. Not acknowledgement of the years of favoritism and my years of being invisible. Just another ask. Another request for me to solve her problems while she absolved herself of responsibility. No, I said simply. No to which part? All of it. I'm not using my professional reputation to get you a job you'll lose in 6 months. I'm not helping you financially. I'm not providing emotional support for a crisis you created. I'm done. Her face transformed, tears drying instantly. You've always been jealous of me. Mom said you couldn't handle not being the favorite anymore. That's when I knew. The crying, the desperation, it was all performance. She'd expected me to cave, like I always had before. I need to get back to work, I said, standing. Goodbye, Sienna. She followed me out, voice rising. You're going to regret this. When I'm successful and happy, you'll regret being such a bitch to me when I needed you. I kept walking. My colleague Devin met me in the hallway. Was that your sister? Unfortunately, she's intense. That's one word for it. I returned to my desk and opened my email. There was a message from my parents' financial advisor, Richard, responding to a carefully worded inquiry I'd sent a week earlier. The contents confirmed what I'd suspected. My parents were in significant debt, largely due to subsidizing Sienna's lifestyle. They'd refinanced their house twice, maxed out 3 credit cards, and taken out a personal loan. Their retirement savings were depleted. They were 62 and 64, approaching retirement age with less security than I'd had at 25. The consequences of their choices were becoming tangible. but they didn't know I knew. That was going to change soon. That evening, I received a certified letter at my apartment, a formal request from my parents drafted by a lawyer, asking me to contribute to a family support fund for Sienna. The letter cited family obligations, moral duties, and implied that my refusal constituted elder abuse by neglect. I read it twice, then called my own lawyer. "Can they do this?" I asked. "Send me the letter," she replied. An hour later, "This is nonsense. Legally, you have zero obligation to support your adult sister financially. The elder abuse claim is laughable since you're not responsible for your parents' financial decisions. This is intimidation, nothing more. Can I use this? In what context? I'm building a case, not legal exactly. More comprehensive." She was quiet for a moment. "Be careful, Marin. Family law is tricky, and revenge can backfire. This isn't revenge, it's accountability." The next Sunday, my parents hosted a family dinner, inviting me via text with the ominous addendum, "We need to discuss family responsibilities. Your presence is required." I almost declined, but this was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. I confirmed my attendance and began preparing. I spent the week before the required family dinner in meticulous preparation. The leather portfolio that had lived in my bag since my birthday had grown thicker, now containing not just my original documentation, but additional materials I'd gathered through strategic conversations and public records requests. Tuesday evening, I met with Uncle James at a quiet restaurant 40 minutes outside Denver. He brought a shoebox full of financial records, copies of checks he'd written to my parents, text message screenshots detailing their promises to repay him, and a handwritten ledger he'd kept of every dollar they'd borrowed from various family members over the years to cover Sienna's emergencies. "I started keeping this after the third time they hit me up for money," James explained, sliding the box across the table. "I had a feeling it would matter someday. Your grandmother, before she passed, she saw this dynamic too. She tried to talk to your dad about it, about how they were destroying both their daughters in different ways. He refused to listen. Grandmother knew? This was new information. She left you that antique desk in her will, remember? The one your parents said got lost in the estate sale?" James's expression was grim. "It didn't get lost. Your dad sold it to pay for Sienna's security deposit on her second apartment. Your grandmother wanted you to have it specifically because she knew you were the one who'd actually appreciate and care for it." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "They told me it was lost. They've told you a lot of things that weren't true. The estate split, for instance. Your grandmother left you and Sienna equal inheritances, $15,000 each. Your parents administered the estate. They gave Sienna her $15,000 and told her to use it wisely. She blew through it in 3 months. They gave you $5,000 and told you that's all there was. The other $10,000 went to covering Sienna's credit card debt. The betrayal was layered, deeper than I'd even realized. Do you have documentation of this?" He pulled out an envelope. Inside was a copy of my grandmother's will. Clear as day. $15,000 to each granddaughter. "I'm a lawyer," James said quietly. "I know how to keep records. And I've been waiting for the right time to share them. Why now? Because you're finally ready to do something about it. And because watching them destroy themselves financially while trying to keep Sienna afloat is like watching a slow-motion car crash. Someone needs to stop it before there's nothing left to save." Wednesday, I had lunch with my Aunt Rachel, my mother's younger sister. We'd never been particularly close, but she'd reached out after hearing about the birthday dinner incident through the family grapevine. "I need to tell you something I probably should have mentioned years ago," Rachel said, stirring her iced tea nervously. "When you were applying to colleges, your parents had a college fund for you. $30,000, saved since you were born. They told you there was no money for school, that you'd need to figure it out yourself through scholarships and work." I remembered. I'd worked 2 jobs through college while maintaining a full scholarship. I'd graduated with minimal debt because of my own effort, not parental support. Where did the money go? Sienna's first apartment required first month, last month, security deposit, and a broker's fee. Total came to $8,000. Then she needed furniture, which your parents bought for her. Another $6,000. Then her car broke down and needed a new engine. $5,000. Then she got into some kind of trouble. Your parents wouldn't tell me the details, but they pulled out the rest to protect her. By the time you were ready for college, the account was empty. They stole my college fund to subsidize Sienna. Essentially, yes. I argued with your mother about it. We didn't speak for 2 years after that fight. She said Sienna needed the money more than you, because you were resourceful enough to figure it out yourself. Thursday, I obtained my parents' refinancing records through a strategic friendship with a title company employee. The documents revealed they'd pulled equity from their home 3 times in 10 years. First refinance, paid off Sienna's car loan and credit cards. Second refinance, covered Sienna's medical bills from an elective surgery. Third refinance, paid for Sienna's emergency cross-country move to pursue a relationship that lasted 6 weeks. Their monthly mortgage payment had tripled. At their current income, they'd be house poor until the day they died, assuming they could even keep making payments. Friday evening, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mom standing alone, looking older than I remembered. I debated not answering, but curiosity won. "Mom, what are you doing here? Can I come in? I wanted to talk to you before Sunday's dinner." Alone. I let her in, but didn't offer her seat or drink. She settled on my couch anyway, looking around at my apartment. "You've done well for yourself," she said, her voice carrying that familiar mix of pride and resentment. "This is a nice place. What do you want, Mom? I want to understand why you're being so difficult about helping Sienna. This isn't like you. You've always been the responsible one, the one we could count on." "Count on for what? To take care of myself so you could focus on her? To not need anything so all your resources could flow in one direction?" She flinched. "That's not fair. We've always treated you girls equally. Mom, you left my 30th birthday dinner early. You told me explicitly that Sienna would always be your priority. Those were your exact words. What part of that is equal?" I was stressed. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. "How many times have you left events for me to handle Sienna's crises? My college graduation, my engagement party, my 28th birthday, my promotion celebration. Every single important moment in my adult life has been interrupted or abandoned because Sienna needed something." She was quiet for a long moment. "Sienna is more fragile than you. She needs more support. Sienna is 30 years old. When does the support end? When does she become responsible for her own life? When she's ready. And if she's never ready?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand what it's like to watch your child struggle, to see her in pain and not be able to fix it. You're right, I don't understand. Because you never watched me struggle. You never had to. Because I fixed my own problems. But that wasn't because I didn't need help, Mom. It was because asking for help had been trained out of me by the time I was 10. That's ridiculous. We've always been here for you. Were you there when I had to figure out college applications alone because you were helping Sienna through her breakup? Were you there when I worked 60 hours a week to pay for my degree because my college fund mysteriously disappeared? Were you there when I had to choose between fixing my car and going to the dentist because I couldn't afford both? And you'd just given Sienna $3,000 for emergency concert tickets?" Her face paled. "How do you know about the college fund?" "I know about a lot of things. The estate money from Grandma that you told me was less than it actually was. The desk you sold that was supposed to be mine. The refinancing you've done 3 times to cover Sienna's debts. I know all of it, Mom. And Sunday's dinner is going to be very interesting." She stood abruptly. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to tell the truth. That's all. The complete, documented truth about the last 30 years of this family's dynamics. You'll destroy us." "No, Mom, you've been destroying yourselves. I'm just going to stop pretending I don't notice." I walked to the door, opening it. "I'll see you Sunday." After she left, I sat in my apartment and felt nothing. No guilt, no hesitation. Just clarity. The people who should have loved me most had chosen over and over to prioritize my sister's immediate wants over my long-term needs. They'd stolen from me financially and emotionally, always with the justification that I was strong enough to handle it. Saturday morning, I finalized the document, 34 pages, meticulously formatted, with tabs and highlights and footnotes. A comprehensive accounting of every instance of favoritism, every dollar diverted, every milestone missed, every promise broken, supporting documentation attached, bank statements, text messages, witness statements, photographs, public records. I made 5 copies, 1 for each parent, 1 for Sienna, 1 for Uncle James, 1 for my records. Then I made a separate document, shorter, more devastating, a comparison of their financial situation now versus what it would have been if they'd treated their daughters equally. The numbers were stark. If they'd split support evenly, they'd have $300,000 more in retirement savings and no house debt. Instead, they had less than $20,000 in savings and were drowning in mortgage payments. I'd also calculated what my life would have looked like with equal support. The college fund they'd given Sienna would have meant less student debt. The down payment help they'd offered her, but not me, would have meant I'd owned my home 5 years earlier. The endless small supports, gas money and grocery money and utility payment assistance would have allowed me to build wealth faster. I'd succeeded despite them, not because of them. The final document was a proposal, forward-looking, pragmatic, a detailed plan for how they could restructure their finances, provided they made fundamental changes to how they allocated support. It required them to cut off Sienna's financial access completely, let her face natural consequences, and begin treating their daughters equally. I didn't expect them to accept it, but I wanted them to see exactly what path could lead to recovery, and exactly what path they'd chosen instead. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold. I dressed carefully, professionally. The leather portfolio containing all my documentation rested on my passenger seat. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6 p.m. as requested. Sienna's car was in the driveway, as expected. So was Uncle James's truck, which was not expected but welcome. I walked in without knocking, like family. The dining room table was set formally, china and crystal, as if this were a celebration rather than an intervention. Mom was in the kitchen, stress cooking. Dad stood by the fireplace, posture rigid. Sienna sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. James was leaning against the far wall, arms crossed, watching everyone with a lawyer's assessing gaze. "Uncle James," Dad said, surprise in his voice. "I didn't realize you'd been invited." "I invited myself," James replied. "Figured this conversation would benefit from a witness, and Marin might need backup." I set my portfolio on the dining table. "Before we eat, I'd like to distribute some reading material." "Marin, this isn't necessary," Mom said, emerging from the kitchen. "We're here to have a family dinner and discuss like adults." How we can all support each other better. Perfect. Then you won't mind reading about how this family has supported each other over the past 30 years. I pulled out the 4 copies, sliding them across the table. There's one for each of you. Take your time. We'll eat after. Dad picked up his copy, scanning the first page. His face went from confusion to anger. This is ridiculous. You've compiled some kind of dossier on us? I've compiled a factual accounting of resource allocation in this family, with documentation. Sienna opened hers, flipping through pages. This is insane. You kept track of every time Mom and Dad helped me? That's psychotic. No, that's accounting. I tracked every instance of disparate treatment. How much you received versus how much I received. How many events of mine were disrupted for your crises versus the reverse. How many times I was told there was no money available while money was simultaneously being given to you. Mom sank into a chair, reading her copy. Her hands shook. Maren, I know we haven't always been perfect, but you're making it sound like we've neglected you deliberately, haven't you? I opened my copy to a tabbed section. Let's look at college funding. You told me there was no college fund. You told me I'd need to work and earn scholarships. I did. I graduated with minimal debt through my own effort. Meanwhile, Sienna received her $15,000 college fund and blew through it in 3 months. Then she dropped out. Did you ask her to repay it? No. Did you offer to help me with tuition costs? No. Why? We needed to prioritize where the money would make the most difference, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. The money would have made a difference in my life too, but you'd already decided I didn't need it because I was managing. That's been the pattern for 30 years. I manage, so I'm ignored. Sienna struggles, so she's prioritized. At what point does that stop being support and start being enabling? I have health problems, Sienna interjected, her voice rising. I have anxiety and depression. I can't just push through life like some robot like you do. You have untreated mental health issues that you refuse to address in any meaningful way beyond medication adjustments and retail therapy. I suggested therapy 4 years ago. You said it was too expensive. How much have Mom and Dad spent on you in that same time period? I flipped to another section. $87,000. That would have covered a lot of therapy. The room fell silent except for the sound of pages turning. James remained at his post, saying nothing, but his presence was supportive anchor. Finally, Mom looked up, tears streaming. What do you want from us, Maren? What's the point of all this? I want you to acknowledge the truth, not justify it, not explain it away, just acknowledge it. Fine, Dad said harshly. We've given Sienna more financial support. Is that what you want to hear? We did it because she needed it more. You were always fine on your own. I was fine on my own because I had no other choice. And every time I was fine, you took that as permission to give more to Sienna. There was never a point where you thought maybe Maren deserves support too. It was always, Maren's handling it, so let's focus on Sienna. That's not fair, Mom protested. We've been proud of you. We've told you that. Pride isn't the same as presence. Pride isn't the same as support. You're proud of what I achieved despite your neglect. That's not the same as helping me achieve it. Sienna stood abruptly. I'm not listening to this anymore. You're just trying to make Mom and Dad feel guilty because you're jealous of me. You've always been jealous. Jealous of what exactly? Your inability to hold a job? Your complete financial dependence on our parents? Your string of failed relationships? What part of your life should I be jealous of, Sienna? She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. You bitch. Sienna, Mom gasped. No, it's fine, I said calmly. She can call me whatever she wants. It doesn't change the facts in these documents. It doesn't change the pattern of behavior. It doesn't change the reality that our parents have destroyed their own financial security trying to subsidize her lifestyle. Dad's face darkened. What are you talking about? I pulled out the second document, the financial analysis. You've refinanced your house 3 times. You've maxed out 3 credit cards. You've depleted your retirement savings. You're 62 and 64 with less savings than I had at 25. All because you've been trying to keep Sienna afloat financially for her entire adult life. How do you know about our finances? Mom demanded. I asked questions. I looked at public records. I did the basic research that any financial analyst would do. And the picture is grim. At your current spending rate, supporting Sienna while trying to maintain your lifestyle, you'll be completely broke in 7 years. What's your plan then? The silence was deafening. James pushed off from the wall. They don't have a plan. They've been operating on the assumption that something will change, that Sienna will suddenly become financially stable, that they'll win the lottery, that you'll step in to support them in their retirement. I won't, I said flatly. Just so we're clear, when you run out of money, I will not be paying your bills or letting you move in with me or subsidizing your lifestyle. You made your choices. You'll live with the consequences. Mom started crying in earnest now. How can you be so cruel? We're your parents, and you've been cruel to me for 30 years. You just never noticed because I didn't complain. I didn't cry. I didn't make scenes. I just handled it. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean I didn't notice. And it doesn't mean I'm obligated to fix the mess you've made. What do you want us to do? Dad asked, defeated. I pulled out the final document. I want you to read this. It's a financial recovery plan. It requires cutting Sienna off completely. No more money, no more bailouts. She gets a job, any job, and supports herself. You drastically reduce your expenses. You sell this house and downsize. You rebuild your retirement savings. And you stop treating your daughters like one is made of glass and one is made of steel. We can't just abandon Sienna, Mom protested. I'm not asking you to abandon her. I'm asking you to stop enabling her. There's a difference. Make her responsible for herself. Let her fail and learn from it. Stop protecting her from consequences. You don't understand, Sienna began. No, you don't understand. Your parents are going to die broke because of you. They're going to spend their final years in poverty because they gave you everything and you squandered it every single time. And instead of learning and changing, you just went back for more. You're a 30-year-old child, and they've made you that way by refusing to let you grow up. She lunged at me, actually physically lunged, hands reaching for my face. James intercepted her, holding her back as she screamed obscenities. Mom rushed to comfort her. Dad just stood there looking old and defeated. I gathered my portfolio. I'm leaving. The documents are yours to keep. The recovery plan is there if you want it, but I'm done being the family safety net. I'm done being the one who sacrifices while Sienna takes. I'm done pretending this is normal or healthy or acceptable. You're on your own now. Figure it out or don't, but you'll do it without me. As I walked to the door, Uncle James followed. In the driveway, he caught my arm. That was brutal. It needed to be. What now? Now I live my life. They make their choices. And I stop caring about the outcome. He nodded. I'm cutting them off too. Financially, I mean. I wanted you to know. You're not alone in this. I drove home through dark streets, hands steady on the wheel. My phone started ringing before I'd gone 2 miles. I turned it off. Whatever they had to say, I didn't need to hear it. The silence lasted exactly 48 hours. Monday evening, I received a certified letter from an attorney I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal notice that my parents were pursuing legal action against me for financial elder abuse and demanding I contribute to a family support plan that would require me to pay $1,500 monthly toward their expenses and Sienna's care. I read it twice, then called my own attorney, Melissa Choi. They're actually doing this, I said, scanning the document to her via email. Melissa called back within an hour. This is frivolous and borderline sanctionable. They have zero legal standing to compel you to support them or your adult sister. The elder abuse claim is particularly ridiculous since you haven't prevented them from accessing any of their own resources. Their financial problems are self-created. I can make this go away, but it'll cost them legal fees when they lose. Let them pursue it, I said. I want this on record. I want a judge to see what they're trying to do. Are you sure? This could get ugly. It's already ugly. Might as well make it officially ugly. Tuesday morning, the family group chat exploded. My parents had apparently told extended family about the help I was refusing to provide, painting me as a selfish daughter abandoning them in their time of need. Cousins I barely knew suddenly had opinions about my moral obligations. Aunts who'd never approved of my cold personality found the energy to lecture me about family values. I responded to exactly one message from my grandmother's sister, Great Aunt Helen, who'd sent a private text. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you for turning your back on your parents. My reply was brief. My grandmother left me $15,000 that my parents gave to Sienna instead. My grandmother left me her antique desk that my parents sold to cover Sienna's security deposit. My grandmother saw exactly who my parents were, which is why she tried to protect me through her will. They circumvented her wishes, so please don't tell me what she would think. Helen's response came an hour later. I had no idea. Call me. We talked for 2 hours. Helen had been cut out of the family loop for years after suggesting my parents were spoiling Sienna. She'd watched from a distance, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. I have copies of your grandmother's letters, she told me. She wrote to me about her concerns regarding how your parents were raising you girls. She saw this coming 20 years ago. Would you like to see them? Wednesday, a package arrived via overnight delivery. Inside were 12 letters spanning from when I was 10 until my grandmother's death when I was 16. Each one documented her observations of my parents' favoritism, her attempts to intervene, her growing worry about the long-term effects on both daughters. One letter, written when I was 14, particularly stood out. Marin is becoming invisible in her own family. She's learned that asking for anything results in disappointment, so she's stopped asking. She's competent and capable, but she's also 14 and needs parenting, not neglect. Meanwhile, Sienna is being destroyed by different means. She's learning that crying and helplessness will always be rewarded. Neither girl is being prepared for real life. I've tried talking to my son, but he's convinced that supporting Sienna's sensitive nature is compassionate parenting. He doesn't see that he's crippling her and abandoning Marin. I sat on my apartment floor and cried for the first time since this began. Not for my parents, not for Sienna, but for my grandmother, who'd seen the truth and tried to protect me even knowing she couldn't change the dynamic. Thursday brought a surprise visitor to my office. This time security called up, and I went down to find my cousin Rachel, whom I'd been close to as children, but had drifted from in adulthood. She'd taken Sienna's side in the family group chat drama, calling me selfish and ungrateful. I owe you an apology, Rachel said immediately. I talked to Aunt Helen. She showed me the letters. I had no idea. We went to the coffee shop across the street. Rachel was 34. 2 years older than me and had always been close to Sienna. I thought you were being cruel, she admitted. Sienna's been telling everyone that you refuse to help her with a single car payment even though you're rich and she's struggling. She said you've always been jealous of how much your parents loved her, and you believed her without question. I believed her because that's the story I've been hearing our whole lives, that Sienna was delicate and needed protection, and you were tough and didn't need anyone. I never thought to question whether that was actually true or just a narrative your parents created to justify their behavior. It's what they needed to believe, I said, that they were being good parents by giving Sienna extra support. But you can't give one child everything and the other child nothing and call it good parenting. You've just created two broken people in different ways. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Sienna came to me yesterday asking to borrow $5,000. She said it was an emergency, that she needed it to avoid eviction. When I asked why she'd be evicted when she's living with your parents, she got flustered and changed her story, said it was for medical bills. She's lying. She's always lying. And everyone around her enables it because confronting her means dealing with tears and drama and accusations. It's easier to just give her what she wants. I didn't give her the money. I wanted you to know that. Friday afternoon, Melissa called with an update on the legal situation. They've escalated. They're not just demanding money now. They're attempting to establish guardianship over you. I almost laughed. I'm sorry, what? They're claiming you're mentally unstable and incapable of managing your own affairs. They've submitted a petition requesting emergency guardianship so they can access your finances for your own protection. It's insane and it'll be thrown out, but it shows how desperate they're getting. This is because I won't fund Sienna's life. This is financial abuse, Marin. What they're attempting is actually criminal. I'm documenting everything, and I'm considering filing a countersuit for harassment and abuse of process. That evening, Uncle James called. I got served with a subpoena. They want me to testify about your erratic behavior and concerning statements regarding the family. They're building a case that you're mentally incompetent. You're kidding. I wish I was. Their attorney is someone who specializes in elder law and guardianship cases. This is a coordinated strategy. They're going after your money through the legal system. Can they succeed? Not a chance. But they can make your life hell trying. Guardianship cases require hearings, evaluations, testimony. It's invasive and expensive, even when you win. I sat in my apartment after the call ended, staring at the leather portfolio that had started all this. The documentation of favoritism that had seemed so important a week ago now felt quaint compared to what my parents were attempting. They weren't just denying their favoritism anymore. They were trying to legally access my finances to continue supporting Sienna. Saturday morning, I did something I'd been avoiding. I drove to my parents' house unannounced. I needed to look them in the eye and understand if they truly grasped what they were doing. Dad answered the door, surprise flickering across his face. Marin, we weren't expecting you. We need to talk. Alone. Not with Sienna. Not with Mom. Just you and me. He hesitated, then stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind him. Your mother is very upset about the things you said Sunday. Sienna is devastated. Are you really trying to get guardianship over me? His face hardened. We're trying to protect you from yourself. You're clearly going through some kind of breakdown. The documents you created, the accusations, the refusal to help your family. This isn't the daughter we raised. You're right. The daughter you raised was silent and compliant, and handled everything herself while you focused on Sienna. That daughter is gone. What you have now is an adult woman who sees exactly what you've done and refuses to participate anymore. We've given you everything. You gave Sienna everything. You gave me expectations and neglect. We gave you independence and self-reliance. You gave me abandonment and called it character building. I pulled out my phone, pulling up my bank app. You want to see my finances? You want to establish guardianship so you can access my money? Here's what you'd find. $400,000 in retirement savings, $120,000 in liquid savings, a paid-off car, a condo I'm about to buy that'll be mine. No mortgage. I built this by myself, despite you, not because of you, and you're not getting a penny of it. His face went white. $400,000? I'm 30 years old and I've been saving aggressively since I was 22. I live below my means. I make smart financial choices. I don't create emergencies that require parental bailouts. This is what happens when someone is actually responsible with money. You've been hoarding wealth while your sister struggled, while your own parents faced financial difficulties. I've been building security while you destroyed yours, subsidizing Sienna's inability to function as an adult. Your financial difficulties are self-created. You chose to refinance your house 3 times. You chose to max out credit cards. You chose to deplete your retirement savings. All of it went to Sienna. All of it. And now that you're facing consequences, you want me to fix it. I won't. What if your mother and I end up homeless? His voice cracked slightly. Then you'll experience the natural consequences of your choices. I won't house you. I won't support you. You had resources. You had a college fund for me that you gave to Sienna. You had equity in this house that you pulled out repeatedly. You had retirement savings. You liquidated everything for her, and now you have nothing. That's on you. She's your sister, and you're my parents, but being related doesn't create unlimited obligation. You made your choice very clear. Sienna would always be your priority. Message received. I've arranged my life accordingly. I walked away from that conversation feeling neither triumph nor guilt, just clarity. They'd shown me exactly who they were through 3 decades of consistent behavior. I'd finally stopped making excuses for it. Sunday, the family group chat exploded again, this time with an announcement from my parents. They were hosting a family intervention for me, professional counselor included. All relatives invited. My concerning behavior would be addressed in a supportive environment. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Melissa. They're escalating to public humiliation now. Family intervention with a counselor. Don't go. Oh, I'm going. But I'm bringing my own documentation and I'm recording everything. Colorado's a one-party consent state. Marin, this could backfire. It could. But I'm done hiding. If they want a public reckoning, they'll get one, just not the one they're expecting. Monday evening, I arrived at my parents' house to find the living room full of relatives, 23 people. Some I barely recognized. Front and center sat a woman in business casual, introducing herself as Dr. Patricia Simmons, a family counselor specializing in intervention services. Mom had been crying, eyes red and swollen. Dad looked grim. Sienna sat beside them, the picture of concerned solidarity. Uncle James was conspicuously absent, having told them he'd have no part in this farce. Marin, Dr. Simmons began, her voice professionally sympathetic. Your family has asked me here because they're concerned about you. They've noticed some troubling behaviors lately and want to offer support in a safe environment. What troubling behaviors specifically? Cutting off contact with family members, making accusations about unequal treatment, refusing to help during family crises, creating elaborate documents to justify antisocial behavior. She consulted her notes. Your parents are worried you might be experiencing a mental health crisis. I pulled out my phone, setting it to record, and placed it visibly on the coffee table. Everything that's said here is being recorded. Colorado law permits one-party consent recording. If anyone objects to being recorded, they can leave now. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably. No one left. Let's talk about these troubling behaviors, I continued, starting with the documentation. I pulled out copies of my 34-page report, handing them to Dr. Simmons. This is a factual accounting of resource allocation in this family over 30 years. Every instance is documented with evidence. Bank statements, text messages, photographs, public records. Please review it. While she read, the room was silent except for shuffling and uncomfortable coughs. I addressed the assembled relatives. How many of you received a version of events from my parents that painted me as a selfish daughter refusing to help her struggling sister? Hands raised. Nearly everyone. How many of you were told that I'm wealthy and refusing to share while my parents face financial hardship? More hands. How many of you were told that Sienna's struggles are due to mental health issues beyond her control? Almost every hand. Now let me tell you the truth. I pulled out the financial analysis. My parents have given Sienna $87,000 in direct financial support over the past 5 years. They've refinanced their house 3 times to cover her debts and expenses. They've maxed out 3 credit cards. They've depleted their retirement savings from over $300,000 to less than $20,000. All of this to support a 30-year-old woman who has never held a job for more than 8 months and creates a financial crisis every 2 to 3 months like clockwork. That's not fair, Sienna interjected. You don't understand what it's like to struggle with mental health. You're right. I don't understand what it's like to use mental health as an excuse for financial irresponsibility while refusing to actually address those mental health issues in any meaningful way. You've been in crisis for 10 years, Sienna. At some point, it stops being a crisis and starts being a lifestyle choice. Dr. Simmons looked up from the documentation. Her professional composure cracked slightly. This is quite detailed. Mrs. Peterson? Mr. Peterson? Were you aware that your daughter had compiled this information? We knew she was tracking things, Mom said defensively. We didn't realize she'd turned it into some kind of legal document designed to destroy our family. It's not designed to destroy anything, I corrected. It's designed to show the truth. For 30 years, you've allocated approximately 95% of your parental resources, financial, emotional, and time to one daughter. The other daughter received approximately 5%. You can't do that and call it equal. You can't do that and then demand the neglected daughter fix the financial disaster you've created through that inequality. We gave you independence, Dad said. We knew you could handle yourself. You gave me abandonment and called it independence. There's a difference. Rachel, my cousin who'd apologized earlier, spoke up. I think Marin has a point. I've watched this dynamic my whole life. Sienna gets unlimited support and still can't manage basic adulting. Marin gets nothing and has built an impressive life. Something about that equation doesn't add up. Thank you, Mom said sarcastically. It's nice to know our niece is taking sides against us. I'm not taking sides, I'm observing facts. Sienna, how many jobs have you had in the past 5 years? Sienna's face reddened. That's not relevant. It absolutely is relevant. You've cycled through at least 8 jobs. You've been fired from 6 of them. The other 2 you quit because your boss was mean or the work was too stressful. At what point do you take responsibility for your own pattern of behavior? Dr. Simmons was reading through the documents more carefully now. her expression shifting from professional neutrality to visible concern. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, this documentation suggests a pattern of what's called parentification and scapegoating in family systems theory. One child is designated as the responsible one and given adult responsibilities and expectations from a young age, while the other is designated as needy and given unlimited support without age-appropriate expectations for independence. That's therapeutic jargon. Dad dismissed. We loved our daughters equally. We just supported them differently based on their different needs. But that's the problem, Dr. Simmons said gently. Love isn't just about feelings. It's about actions. And according to these records, your actions heavily favored one daughter. The question is, why? The room fell silent. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice small. Sienna reminded us of my younger sister. She struggled with depression and anxiety, and she paused, collecting herself. She took her own life when she was 32. We were terrified the same thing would happen to Sienna, so we protected her. We supported her. We made sure she knew we'd always be there. This was new information, an aunt I'd never heard about. Mom, that's tragic. But protecting Sienna from ever experiencing consequences didn't protect her. It handicapped her. She's 30 years old and can't function independently because you've never required her to. We were trying to keep her alive, Mom whispered. And what about keeping me alive? Emotionally? Mentally? Did it occur to you that abandoning one daughter while desperately clinging to the other might damage both of us? Dr. Simmons closed the folder. I think there's been a significant misunderstanding about why I was asked here today. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, you contacted me to conduct an intervention for Marin's concerning behavior. But based on this documentation and what I'm observing, Marin's behavior is not concerning. It's boundary setting, which is healthy and appropriate. What's concerning is the family dynamic that's led to this point. We're paying you to help us, Dad said sharply. You're paying me to provide professional assessment. My professional assessment is that this family needs systemic therapy, not an intervention for Marin. The financial dependence, the emotional enmeshment, the unequal distribution of resources, these are serious family dysfunction patterns that have been established over decades. This is bullshit. Sienna stood abruptly. You all believe her lies and her spreadsheets because she's good at manipulating numbers. I'm the victim here. I'm the one who's struggled. I'm the one who's needed help. And everyone's acting like that makes me the villain. You're not the villain, I said quietly. You're the product of really bad parenting. Mom and Dad crippled you by never letting you experience natural consequences. They destroyed their financial security trying to protect you from your own choices. And now they're trying to force me to continue the pattern by supporting all three of you. I won't. That doesn't make you a villain. But it also doesn't make me responsible for fixing what they broke. The intervention ended without the outcome my parents had planned. Several relatives left saying they needed to reassess what they'd been told. Dr. Simmons provided my parents with referrals for family therapy and financial counseling, though she noted that success would require Sienna's full participation and their willingness to fundamentally change their approach. As I gathered my things to leave, Mom caught my arm. What happens now? That's up to you. You can accept the reality that's been documented, you can make changes, you can seek therapy, or you can continue as you have been and face the natural consequences. But you'll do it without my financial support and without my emotional labor trying to fix what you broke. You're really going to abandon us. I'm setting boundaries. If that feels like abandonment, that says more about your expectations than my behavior. I walked out of that house knowing it was likely the last time I'd be there for a long time. The recording from the evening was safely backed up. The truth had been spoken in front of witnesses. Whatever happened next was their choice. The guardianship petition hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks after the failed intervention. During that time, my phone remained mostly silent. No calls from my parents, no texts from Sienna, just occasional updates from Uncle James and Melissa about the legal proceedings. What I didn't know until later was that during those 3 weeks, my parents were spiraling. Without my presence as a potential financial safety net, without the fantasy that I'd eventually cave and support them, they were forced to confront their actual situation, and it was catastrophic. The day before the hearing, Melissa called with news. They're withdrawing the petition. Their attorney contacted me this morning. They're dropping the guardianship case entirely. Why? I suspect their attorney finally reviewed your financial documentation and realized they had no case. But there's more. Your parents filed for bankruptcy this morning. I sat down, processing this. Bankruptcy. Chapter 7. They're liquidating everything. The house is going into foreclosure. Their attorney included a note that they'd like to speak with you about potential family reconciliation and support options. I told them to communicate through me. The bankruptcy explained the silence. They'd been too busy trying to salvage their financial situation to harass me. I should have felt vindication. Instead, I felt hollow. The hearing still happened, despite the withdrawn petition. The judge wanted to understand what had prompted such an unusual case. I sat in the courtroom with Melissa. While my parents and their attorney explained that they'd been misguided, had received poor advice, and were withdrawing all claims. Judge Morrison was a black woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She read through the case file, including the documentation I'd submitted as evidence of my competence. "This is one of the more unusual guardianship petitions I've seen," she said. "Miss Peterson, do you have anything you'd like to add?" I stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to request that the court seal this case file but keep it on record. If my parents attempt this again, I want documentation that this is a pattern." Granted. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, I'm going to be very clear. Guardianship is designed to protect vulnerable adults who cannot care for themselves. Attempting to use it to access an adult child's finances is an abuse of the legal system. If you attempt this again, you will face sanctions. Do you understand? They nodded, both looking older and smaller than I remembered. Outside the courtroom, Dad approached me. Mom and Sienna waited by their car. "Marin, we need to talk. Can you give us 5 minutes?" Melissa started to object, but I nodded. "It's fine. 5 minutes." We walked to a quiet corner of the courthouse parking lot. Dad looked exhausted, his suit hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight. "The house is being foreclosed on. We have to be out in 60 days. We have no savings, no retirement, nothing. We were hoping. We thought maybe you could help us find an affordable rental. Not give us money, just help us navigate the rental market. Your expertise. Where's Sienna going to live?" His face tightened. "She'll be staying with us, obviously." So the pattern continues. You've lost everything, and she's still the priority. She has nowhere else to go. She has 2 hands, a college degree she never finished, and 30 years of potential work experience if she'd ever stayed at a job longer than 8 months. She has exactly as many options as anyone else her age. You've just convinced her she doesn't. We can't just throw her out on the street. No one's suggesting you throw her out. I'm suggesting you require her to contribute, get a job, any job, and pay rent, even a small amount. Something that acknowledges she's an adult with adult responsibilities. She's not capable of that right now. She's going through a very difficult time emotionally. She's been going through a difficult time emotionally for 10 years. At what point does it stop being a difficult time and start being her baseline? At what point do you acknowledge that your support has prevented her from developing coping mechanisms and life skills? Mom joined us, having apparently been unable to stay away. We know we made mistakes. We're willing to admit that now, but we need help, Marin. Real help. We're facing homelessness. You're facing the consequences of your choices. You chose to spend $87,000 on Sienna instead of maintaining your savings. You chose to refinance your house 3 times. You chose to max out credit cards and deplete retirement funds. Those were your choices. The consequences are also yours. But we're your parents, Mom said, tears starting. You're adults who made adult decisions. I'm also an adult who's making adult decisions. Mine include not subsidizing the continuation of dysfunctional family patterns. So that's it? You're just going to watch us lose everything? Dad's voice rose. You already lost everything. I'm just refusing to delay the inevitable. You have 60 days to find housing. I suggest you use that time to require Sienna to find employment and start contributing. I suggest you downsize dramatically. Find a small apartment you can afford on Dad's Social Security and whatever part-time work you can find. I suggest you live within your means for the first time in decades. And if we can't manage, Mom asked, then you'll experience what millions of people in this country experience. Financial instability due to poor planning. You'll apply for assistance programs. You'll downsize your expectations. You'll figure it out just like you always told me to do. I walked away from them for the second time, each step feeling lighter despite the weight of what I was doing. Melissa caught up with me at my car. That was brutal but necessary. Are you okay? I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. For the first time in my life, I'm not carrying their dysfunction. 2 weeks later, Uncle James called with an update. They found a 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town, $800 a month. Sienna had a complete meltdown about having to share a bathroom with your parents. She's demanding they get a 3-bedroom, which they can't afford. Let me guess. They're asking relatives for money. They've hit up everyone. Rachel said no. Your Aunt Patricia said no. I said hell no. They're running out of options. Good. Marin, I say this with love. You've got ice in your veins. No, I've just stopped setting myself on fire to keep them warm. The day they moved out of the house, I drove by. Not to help, just to see. The moving truck was small, a fraction of the size needed for their former home's contents. Piles of furniture sat on the lawn with free signs. Sienna stood on the porch, crying dramatically while my mother tried to comfort her. My father loaded boxes, his movements slow and defeated. I didn't stop. I drove past and went to work, where I had a meeting with a new client who appreciated my financial expertise and paid my firm handsomely for my advice. 3 weeks into their new living situation, I received an email, not from my parents, but from Sienna. The subject line, "You destroyed our family." The email was long, incoherent, bouncing between accusations and self-pity. I destroyed them by refusing to enable dysfunction. I was heartless for not helping when they'd always been there for me. I was jealous and bitter and would end up alone because no one could love someone so cold. I read it once, then archived it without responding. That weekend, Rachel called. I saw Sienna working at Target. She looked miserable. I almost felt bad for her. Don't. A job is good for her. And she told me they're making her work there, that your parents gave her an ultimatum. Get a job or get out. Finally. How long has she been working there? This was her second day. She says she hates it. The schedule is terrible. The customers are rude. Her feet hurt. All the things everyone experiences at their first retail job. She'll either adjust or she won't. Either way, it's not my problem. 1 month after the bankruptcy filing, I received a letter from my parents. Actual paper, actual stamps, delivered through the mail. Inside was a 2-page handwritten note from my mother. Dearest Maren, it began, the handwriting shaky. I'm writing because your father is too proud and Sienna is too angry. But someone needs to reach out. We've been living in the new apartment for a month now. It's small and the neighborhood isn't great, but we're managing. Your father has been picking up handyman jobs through an app. I'm doing some cleaning work for a family in the area. Sienna is working at Target, though she complains constantly. I've had a lot of time to think about everything you said, about the favoritism, about the enabling, about how we destroyed our financial security trying to protect Sienna from consequences. You were right, about all of it. I can see it now. Now that we're living in a 2-bedroom apartment and splitting 1 bathroom and watching Sienna learn what real work is for the first time. I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what we did to you. We made you invisible. We made you responsible for yourself before you should have been. We celebrated your independence because it was convenient for us, not because we were proud. We failed you as parents. Sienna is struggling here, not just with the work and the small space, but with reality. She's realizing that no one is going to rescue her anymore, that she has to build her own life. It's painful to watch, but you were right about this too. We crippled her by protecting her from everything. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for help. I'm just asking if maybe someday you might be willing to talk. Not to reconcile necessarily, but just to talk. I'd like to understand the woman you became despite our failures, not because of them. With love and regret, Mom. I read the letter 3 times. It was the closest thing to accountability I'd received from either parent. No excuses, no justifications, just acknowledgement. I didn't respond immediately. I needed to think about what, if anything, I wanted from a relationship with my parents going forward. 2 days later, I called Dr. Simmons, the counselor from the intervention. I'd like to schedule a session. Individual, not family. I need to process some things. We met the following week. I brought the letter, my documentation, and 30 years of complicated feelings. I don't know if I want a relationship with them, I admitted. Part of me wants them to suffer, part of me wants them to understand what they did, and a very small part of me wonders if reconciliation is possible. Those are all valid feelings, Dr. Simmons said. The question is, what do you need to be okay? Regardless of their response. What does closure look like for you? I thought about this for a long time. I need them to understand that their actions had consequences, real ones, that they can't undo the past by acknowledging it, that I built my life without them, and I don't need them to be okay. And if they can truly understand that, would you want a relationship? Maybe. A different one with boundaries, one where I'm not responsible for fixing their problems or managing Sienna's life, one where we're all adults making adult choices. That's healthy and achievable if they're willing to do the work. 3 months after the bankruptcy, I agreed to meet my mother for coffee. Just her, not Dad, and definitely not Sienna. We met at a neutral location, a Starbucks halfway between our respective homes. She looked different. Older, yes, but also somehow lighter. The expensive clothes and perfectly maintained hair were gone, replaced by Target clearance rack and a simple ponytail. She worked cleaning houses now, she explained. 4 days a week, different families. It was hard work, but honest. Your father is doing handyman jobs, she continued. He's actually good at it. People hire him back regularly. We're managing. We'll never rebuild what we lost, but we're managing. And Sienna? Her expression tightened. Sienna is struggling. She's still at Target, but barely. She's been written up twice for attendance issues. She fights with us constantly about the apartment, about money, about everything. But we're holding firm. She pays $250 in rent or she finds somewhere else to live. She contributes to groceries or she doesn't eat what we buy. It's hard, but you were right. We did her no favors by protecting her from reality. Is she in therapy? She refuses. Says she can't afford it. Even though there are sliding scale options, I think she doesn't want to confront her own patterns. We talked for an hour. She asked about my life, and I gave her edited versions. My work was going well. I was closing on a condo purchase next month. I'd been dating someone casually, surface-level things that didn't require emotional vulnerability. At the end, she asked, is there a path forward for us as mother and daughter? Maybe, but it requires you to accept that I don't owe you anything. Not money, not caretaking, not emotional labor. You get whatever relationship I choose to give, on my terms, with my boundaries. I understand. And Marin, I really am sorry. For all of it. I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't. Instead, I know you are. 6 months after the bankruptcy, I attended Thanksgiving at Uncle James's house. He'd invited the whole family, including my parents and Sienna, but made it clear that drama wouldn't be tolerated. To everyone's surprise, Sienna didn't come. She'd apparently moved in with a boyfriend she'd been dating for 3 weeks, convinced this relationship would solve all her problems. My parents looked tired but stable. They'd been in the apartment for 6 months now. They'd downsized their lives dramatically. No cable, no eating out, no unnecessary expenses. Dad's handyman business was growing through word of mouth. Mom had her regular cleaning clients. They were surviving. We maintained polite distance during dinner. I talked with Rachel and James. My parents talked with their generation. At one point, Dad approached me as I was getting pie. Your mother showed me the letter she wrote you, the one you never responded to. I didn't know what to say. She didn't expect a response. She just needed to say it. He paused. I should have written my own letter. Should have been the one to acknowledge what we did. But I was too proud. Too convinced we'd been right. And now? Now I see a daughter who built an incredible life without us, who's financially secure and professionally successful and happier than we've been in years. And I see another daughter who can't keep a job or a relationship, who's chasing the next rescue instead of building something real. We did that. We created both those outcomes. Yes, you did. I'm proud of you. Myron, I should have said that more. I should have seen you more. I'm sorry I didn't. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. And maybe that was enough for now. 1 year after my 30th birthday, I closed on my condo. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen, small balcony overlooking downtown Denver. I moved in with minimal furniture because I'd been saving for investments, not material possessions. Uncle James helped me move, along with Rachel and her husband. My parents sent a card with a gift card to a home goods store, $50, which I knew represented a sacrifice from their tight budget. Sienna sent nothing, which I'd expected. That night, sitting on my new balcony with a glass of wine, I thought about the year that had passed, the birthday dinner that had sparked everything, the documentation and confrontations and legal battles, the bankruptcy and downsizing and forced accountability. My parents were living small lives now, working service jobs in their 60s. Supporting themselves in ways they'd never had to before. Sienna was cycling through boyfriends and jobs, still avoiding reality, but at least no longer being subsidized in that avoidance. Uncle James had become the father figure I'd needed, consistently present and supportive. And me? I was exactly where I needed to be, financially secure, professionally successful, living in a home I'd bought with my own money, answering to no one, responsible for no one's crises but my own. 2 years after the bankruptcy, my mother called with news that shifted something fundamental. Sienna's pregnant, she said without preamble. 8 weeks. The father is that boyfriend she moved in with last year. He left when she told him. I processed this. How is she handling it? She's terrified. She's working 2 part-time jobs now, trying to save money, but it's not enough. She asked if she could move back in with us. Mom paused. We said no. You said no? We told her we'd help with baby items and babysitting when we could, but we wouldn't house her and the baby rent-free. We can't afford it, and more importantly, she needs to figure this out herself. She's looking at income-based housing programs and WIC and all the resources available to single mothers. For the first time in her life, she's actually researching solutions instead of just crying until someone fixes it. How do you feel about that? Terrified, proud, guilty, all of it. Her voice cracked. I'm going to be a grandmother to a child whose mother barely knows how to take care of herself. But I'm also watching Sienna finally grow up, and it's because we stopped rescuing her. 3 months later, I received an unexpected text from Sienna. Just my address and, can I come by? I almost said no, but curiosity won. She arrived at my condo looking 5 months pregnant and exhausted, carrying a worn purse I recognized from high school. I'm not here to ask for money, she said immediately, settling heavily on my couch. I just needed to talk to someone who isn't mom or dad. I made tea, more for something to do with my hands than hospitality. Okay, I'm listening. I'm scared. The baby's coming in 4 months and I have $2,000 saved. I'm working at Target and a restaurant, 40 hours total a week, and I'm so tired all the time. I applied for housing assistance and WIC and Medicaid, and the paperwork is humiliating. I have to prove I'm poor enough to deserve help. That's how those programs work. I know, I'm not complaining. Well, I am, but I get it. She sipped her tea. Mom and Dad won't let me move back in. They said they'll help with babysitting and they bought me a crib, but I'm on my own for housing. Do you know how hard it is to find a landlord who'll rent to a pregnant single woman with spotty work history? I imagine it's very difficult. The thing is, I finally understand why you were so angry, why you documented everything, why you refused to help. She looked at me directly for the first time. I've been the biggest burden. For 30 years, I took and took and took, and I I never thought about what it cost anyone else. Not you, not mom and dad, nobody. I just assumed the world owed me support because I was struggling. What changed? Getting pregnant. Realizing there's going to be a human who depends on me the way I've depended on everyone else. And knowing that if I keep being the person I've been, I'm going to destroy this kid the same way mom and dad destroyed me by never making me face reality. This was the most self-aware I'd ever heard Sienna speak. What do you want from me? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe just to tell you that you were right about all of it. I'm a mess because they let me be a mess. And you're successful because they forced you to be. That's not fair to either of us. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. Maybe for the first time in our adult lives. She told me about the boyfriend who'd left. About the fear of becoming a mother when she barely functioned as an adult. About the job applications and budgeting and reality of trying to build a life with no safety net. When she left, I sat with our conversation. This wasn't reconciliation exactly, but it was acknowledgement. Sienna was finally experiencing what I'd lived for decades, having to figure it out alone with no one to catch you when you fell. 4 months later, Sienna had her baby, a girl she named Emma. I visited the hospital, bringing a gift card for diapers and formula. Sienna looked exhausted, but somehow more present than I'd ever seen her. I found a 1-bedroom apartment through the housing program, she told me, holding Emma. It's tiny and it's in a rough neighborhood, but it's mine. Well, mine and Emma's. I start back at Target in 6 weeks. Mom's going to watch Emma while I work. How are you going to manage financially? WIC for formula and food, Medicaid for healthcare. I'm budgeting every dollar. It's terrifying. She looked down at Emma. But I can't mess this up. She deserves better than a mother who never learned to adult. Over the next year, I watched Sienna transform. Not into a perfect mother, she still struggled, still made mistakes, but into a functional adult for the first time in her life. She kept her Target job. She managed her tiny apartment. She showed up for Emma even when she was exhausted. My parents became involved grandparents, but with boundaries. They babysat twice a week so Sienna could work, but they didn't provide financial bailouts. When Sienna's car broke down, they helped her research affordable mechanics, not handed her a check. When she struggled with Emma's crying, they talked her through solutions, not took the baby from her. 3 years after my 30th birthday, I hosted Thanksgiving at my condo. Small gathering. Uncle James, my parents, Sienna and Emma, Rachel and her family. Normal. Almost functional. Emma, now 2, played with blocks on my living room floor. Sienna looked healthy, had maintained employment for over 2 years at the same Target, a record for her. My parents looked older, but somehow younger, freed from the weight of constant financial crisis. After dinner, Dad asked to speak with me privately. We stepped onto my balcony. I wanted you to know that we updated our will, he said. Everything's split 50-50 between you and Sienna now, and everything isn't much, but it's equal. I appreciate that. We also wanted to apologize formally, in writing if you want it, for the years of unequal treatment, for stealing your college fund, for missing your important events, for making you invisible while we focused on Sienna, for trying to legally access your money when you wouldn't enable our dysfunction. He paused. We failed you as parents. We succeeded in making you independent, but we failed in making you feel loved and seen. I know. Do you think you'll ever forgive us? I considered this. I don't know, but I'm willing to build something new. Not restore what was, because what wasn't good for anyone, but maybe create something better. We'll take that. 4 years after my birthday disaster, I got engaged to Devin, my colleague who'd witnessed the early stages of my family revolution. He'd seen me through all of it. Never pushing, always supporting. His proposal was simple, private, perfect. When I told my parents, they cried. Happy tears this time. He seems good for you, Mom said, and he's patient with our complicated family. He is. Will Sienna be in the wedding? I'd thought about this. Yes, but not as maid of honor. That's Rachel. Sienna can be a bridesmaid if she wants. Equal to Devin's sister. No special treatment. No special position. She'll understand. The wedding was small, outdoors, beautiful. Sienna attended with Emma, who was the flower girl. My parents walked me down the aisle together, a gesture of inclusion without special privilege. Uncle James officiated. In my vows, I thanked Devin for loving me through my family chaos, for supporting my boundary setting, for never asking me to compromise my values for the sake of peace. I didn't mention my family specifically, but everyone understood what I wasn't saying. At the reception, Sienna pulled me aside. Thank you for including me. I know I don't deserve it after everything. You deserve a chance to be part of a healthier family dynamic. We all do. 5 years after the bankruptcy, my parents threw a small party celebrating 5 years of financial stability. They'd rebuilt tiny savings, maintained their apartment, kept their jobs, small victories that meant everything. Sienna had been promoted to department manager at Target. She was dating someone new, slowly, carefully. Emma was in preschool. Sienna had started taking evening classes at community college, working toward finishing her degree. Progress was slow, but it was real. I'd been promoted to partner at my firm. My condo had appreciated significantly. My retirement accounts were robust. Devin and I were talking about buying a house, maybe starting a family of our own. At the party, I looked around at these people who'd caused me so much pain and who were now slowly becoming something different, not perfect, not healed completely, but functional, accountable, growing. Uncle James raised his glass to the Peterson family. Broken apart, rebuilt differently, maybe better for it. We drank to that. That night, lying in bed, Devin asked, "Do you regret it? The confrontation? The documentation? All of it?" No. They needed to face reality. All of them. And I needed to stop carrying their dysfunction. But it cost you years of relationship with them. It cost me a relationship that was destroying me. What we have now isn't the same. But it's healthier. They see me now, really see me, and they're seeing Sienna clearly too, which is helping her finally grow up. 7 years after that birthday dinner, I attended Emma's 7th birthday party at Sienna's apartment. No longer the tiny one-bedroom from the housing program, she'd moved to a modest 2-bedroom she rented in a decent neighborhood. The walls were covered with Emma's artwork and photos of their small but real life. My parents were there, bringing a homemade cake. Uncle James and Rachel's family, Devin and our son Michael, who was 2. A normal family gathering with normal dysfunction and normal love. Sienna pulled me aside while Emma opened presents. "I don't think I ever properly thanked you." "For what?" "For refusing to enable me. For forcing Mom and Dad to stop rescuing me. For showing me what accountability looks like." She gestured around her apartment. "This isn't much, but it's mine. I pay for it. I earned it. And Emma's going to grow up watching her mom actually handle her responsibilities instead of being a perpetual child. You did the work, Sienna. I just stopped preventing the consequences that would have motivated you to start. Still, thank you." 10 years after my 30th birthday, I hosted a family dinner at the house Devin and I had purchased, large enough for everyone, filled with the sound of Emma and Michael playing, my parents helping in the kitchen, Sienna setting the table. Normal, imperfect, real. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my home office looking at the leather portfolio that had started everything. The 34 pages of documentation, the financial analyses, the evidence of decades of favoritism. I'd kept it all this time, a reminder of how far we'd all come. Devin found me there, thinking about burning it, maybe, or maybe keeping it as a reminder that accountability matters, that boundaries matter, that you can love people and still refuse to enable their dysfunction. You changed your whole family by refusing to participate in their patterns. I set myself free. They had to decide what to do with that. Some of them rose to the challenge. That's on them, not me. I closed the portfolio and put it back on the shelf. Not forgotten, but no longer consuming. Just history now. Documented proof that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to save people from themselves. The Peterson family would never be perfect. We carried too much history, too many scars, but we were functional now, honest. Each of us responsible for our own lives, our own choices, our own consequences. And I was finally, fully, completely free.